Thank you. Thank you all so very much. You know, you guys are awesome. This party, for all its warts, is amazing. And that is why I'm not just asking for your endorsement today, but I will abide by your endorsement because this is your party. I want to, before I start, just introduce my family to you. My dad is down in the Becker County delegation. My mom is up in the balcony, I think, somewhere. Thor and Rolf are here somewhere. I'm not sure exactly where. Sandy is down in SD 44. And let me add, while I do not have a super rich ex-wife to bankroll my campaign, I will take a super beautiful, super supportive, one and only wife any day of the week. Thank my family for me. I want to talk to you today about how we win, because I think that's what this is all about. But before I do that, I just want to spend a minute with you on the fight. Because I think the people of Minnesota are desperate for a leader who will fight the status quo and will fight business as usual in St. Paul, and that's what I will do as your governor. I will fight every single day to change the bureaucratic culture in St. Paul from regulate and punish to that of service to the taxpayers who actually pay our salaries. It is about time. I will fight to make Minnesota's business climate actually competitive with the states that surround us. And I will fight, and this one gets to me. You know, I'm not a real emotional guy. I got that from my Norwegian Lutheran grandpa who loved my grandma so much that he almost told her this one time. But this one gets to me. I will fight those who use our children to promote a political agenda like Common Core or a so-called anti-bullying bill. Enough is enough. That one's personal for me. And I will fight to reduce the scope and the power and the size of government, not to slow down its growth, which is what we tend to do sometimes as Republicans, but actually to move in the opposite direction, and not through some silly little gimmick like the unsession. Read about that, where they eliminated practically nothing of any consequence, and they really left it up to us to undo the things that really could help the taxpayers in Minnesota, like, oh, I don't know, getting rid of the worst governor in the United States of America. I guess they've left that up to us. But none of that matters if we can't win. And winning for us as Republicans in this state, it's not about picking the candidate who's been in government the longest, or the candidate who can throw out the most red meat, or the candidate whose turn it is. Winning for us as Republicans in the state of Minnesota is about picking a candidate who can bring in new voters in every region of the state and who can present a very clear, contrasting vision from that of Mark Dayton's. So let me start with the ability to run strong everywhere in Minnesota. First, Greater Minnesota. I was born and raised in Detroit Lakes. Sandy was born and raised in Crookston. We went to college together in Moorhead. Our roots, our families, our values are in Greater Minnesota. And just as importantly, I now have a partner in this race who has spent his entire life farming and serving his community in southern Minnesota, and Big Bill Queasley is going to be an awesome addition to this ticket. The suburbs. I've won twice, actually I've won multiple times, big, in Hennepin County despite my conservative record. And I believe that's because of my message, and I also believe it's because of my demeanor and my personality. I have many independents and moderates who do not agree with me, but trust me and vote for me anyway. And we can use that same formula to work all across the metro area. If I am your candidate, we will take back the suburbs in 2014 for Republicans. And then there's the urban core, and this really frustrates me. Because every 2 years we say as Republicans, we're going to do better in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and then we go out there and we get clobbered again. And you know why that is? It's because we choose candidates who are showing up for the first time in these areas now and asking for votes. As a commissioner, I have been in Minneapolis every single week for 5.5 years, not asking for votes, but trying to solve problems. And if I am your candidate, it is going to be very hard for Democratic leaders, as they always do to us, to convince those in the minority community that I'm evil or that I don't care about them because they know me and they know better. We are going to plant a flag in the ground, and we're going to tell the Democrats, you have taken these good people for granted. One election too long. We will not concede Minneapolis and St. Paul in 2014 to the Democrats. But along with a candidate who can run strong everywhere, we've got to have somebody in this race who's willing to go after this governor. No one else is going to do it for us. And then can present a positive, contrasting vision, but somebody who's able to do all that without coming across as mean or angry. Let me give you an example of how I will do that. Take a look at our first campaign commercial here.
I'm Jeff Johnson, and this is my son, Thor. Like any teenager with a car, he's not quite ready for the responsibility. This is a lot like Mark Dayton behind the wheel of state government. He's unpredictable, he can't see a disaster when it's right in front of him. And the only thing he gets right are the hard left turns. Thanks for the ride, Governor, but it's time for a new direction, to demand results from government and to stop wasting our money. Now hand over the keys.
Folks, we need a candidate with some humor who's able to point out a few key things about this governor. For example, he claims he's for the little guy, but then he supports a $90 million palace for 67 senators. A building, by the way, which is going to have a green roof, which ought to grow pretty well considering all the BS that's going to be taking place in the building underneath it. He expresses outrage at the provisions that are in bills he just signed the week before. As Rob mentions, he tells parents of sick kids to go buy pot on the streets for them. He is a true believer that government ought to control our lives. He is from the nanny state wing of the DFL party that wants to make us all wear helmets in the bathtub. And he insists, and Minnesotans need to know this, he insists that all Minnesotans ought to pay more taxes while he shelters his millions in a trust in South Dakota. My friends, I will do this with humor and humility, but I promise you that if I'm your candidate, every voter in Minnesota is going to know all of those things and more about Mark Dayton well before Election Day, because no one else is going to do it for us. And that leads me to the vision, because it's all about presenting a positive, compelling vision for Minnesotans. So here's mine. I have a vision of a state where a great education is available to every single kid in this state, regardless of where they live or how poor their parents are, and where the principles of economic freedom and equal opportunity and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness have won out over this obsession with government involvement in everything. I have a vision of a state where entrepreneurs run their own businesses and farmers farm their own land and teachers can be innovative and creative in the classroom without worrying about the government sticking its nose in their every move. I have a vision of a state where we truly value every life, whether it's the destitute or the old and infirm or the disabled or the unborn, where we truly value every single life. And I have a vision of a state where we have ended this bitterness and envy over income differences and this belief that the poor are poor and the rich are rich, and all we can do is redistribute the wealth. And instead, we are celebrating those who are successful, and we are never, ever, ever giving up on those who are poor. And we are preaching every day a gospel that the poor can become the middle class and the middle class can become rich, and anyone who starts with nothing can still achieve anything in this great state. That's the vision I'll share, and that's how we're going to win this race. Thank you so much.